Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Stillman and Company on the 440 Sports Network, presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Here today on the program, we have a lot to get into from the weekend that was, as now, again, I think our last show was Wednesday last week because we did Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Tuesday, Wednesday had minicamp practices. And then after that, it was like, okay, well, we're doing 3 a week during the summer. Belvis says smash the like button. I agree. Like and subscribe. And so it's been quite a time, but we have got a lot to react to. First, I do want to tell you about our presenting sponsor. That is Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love Hiller. They take great care of my home. They could do the exact same for you. Hiller has been taking care of my home since I first got my home in 2018. I haven't even thought about using anybody else because there's nobody else worth using. That's right. Hiller has 100% satisfaction of happy you'll be or the service is free. If a customer is not pleased with the work performed, Hiller will make it right. I absolutely love Hiller. Once again, they are proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. That is Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today. Let's start on the big news. And that was that Jeffery Simmons got a contract extension. I believe it came down on Friday. Now, on Wednesday, after OTAs, I asked Jeffery Simmons about his contract. I said, hey, are you looking to get the next contract, or are you looking to, let a couple of other people sign new contracts and go from there? And I should have known better. Not saying I shouldn't have known better to ask. I should have asked. Somebody else should have asked too, by the way. But somebody did tweet out there, Jared Stillman's such an idiot to ask about Jeff's contract. Yeah, okay. Dude signs a contract the next day. But I should have known when Jeffery Simmons was talking about his contract, and he was talking about his agent, Todd France, who is a big-time NFL agent. He is Dak Prescott's agent, amongst others. This is a real thing. This isn't like the guy that Simmons had representing him, the lawyer that had one client and his uncle. No. This was a big-time, Big Daddy agent, and Vin Marino working on the deal. And he said, everybody's been good to me. Miss Amy's been good to me. The organization's been good to me. But Todd and Vin will get it worked out. I should have known then. It's done. Vinny Marino is a cap guy, which is also why I used to laugh all the time when people said, well, Chad Brinker's in charge of the salary cap. And I'm like, they already have a guy that does that. His name is Vin Marino. He came from the league office. He's the probably best in the NFL at that. He's been with the team through regime after regime after regime. Vin Marino is the money guy. So once you decide you're going to extend your contract, the guy who works out the money is Vin Marino. So when Simmons was talking about, hey, my agent and Vin are working on that, we all should have known right then and there. Oh, yeah. This thing is in the final steps of getting done. And let me say, congratulations to Jeffery Simmons. This is a real bona fide contract extension. He had money remaining for the last 2 years on the deal he signed with that other agent a couple of years ago. He's getting 3 new years, $100 million plus, and it's guaranteed. That's a good contract. That is a good deal. That is a top of the market extension. And it's well earned. I think, number one, Simmons deserved the deal. And I had been just banging on Simmons for years, really in between 2022's end of season and the beginning of the 2025 season. So the 23 season, the 24 season, when the team wasn't doing very well and Simmons kept getting all the accolades and all the love, and it was almost like criticizing Simmons was beyond reproach. And I kept saying, if this guy is so fucking good, if this guy is Chris Jones, if this guy is your version of Aaron Donald, why does he not get sacks? And what I've learned in interviewing people and in asking questions of the audience, oftentimes, less is more. So when it comes to Jeffery Simmons, I kept saying, why does this guy not get more sacks? If this guy's so good, why isn't he out there getting the sacks? And everybody got upset about that. And everybody waited on that, including Simmons. And Simmons used to get very upset about this. Talking about, go watch the film. Go watch how much I get double teamed. Go watch how every team keys in on me. And I was like, yes, that's what happens to great players in the NFL. You think J.J. Watt doesn't get extra attention? You think Myles Garrett and Aaron Donald don't get extra attention, or that Chris Jones never got extra attention? Of course they get extra attention, just like great wide receivers get extra attention. And the old saying is, good players get doubled in the NFL. Great players beat double teams in the NFL. That's like Derrick Henry running against loaded boxes. Of course he's running against loaded boxes. He's Derrick effing Henry. And everybody made excuses for Simmons. The Titans made excuses for Simmons. Simmons made excuses for Simmons. Twitter made excuses for Simmons. Callahan made excuses for Simmons. Denard Wilson made excuses for Simmons. And then at some point, and I think it probably has to do with when Jeffery Simmons stepped up and got a real agent, something clicked. Simmons went from 320 to 305. Simmons started dominating. Simmons started getting doubled and dominating. Simmons was good in 2021, 2022. He was incredible in 2025. And I said this after his press availability on Wednesday, that I felt like, wow, I can really feel like Jeffery Simmons is growing up. I could feel that in the press conference, the way he was reacting to questions, the way he was answering questions, the way he was talking optimistically, but not crazy like some people, Cam Ward, talk when it comes to press conferences. I thought, wow, this guy has really grown up. And this is coming from me, a guy who was a Simmons critic and a guy who Simmons put out a motivational video before last season that had a fake quote attributed to me. And the whole time I kept saying, Jeff, I don't care about what you think of me. I don't care what you think of the show. I don't care what you think of the event. I care about you getting to the quarterback. Go get the quarterback. And last year he did. And I think this is a very fair contract. I think the Titans chose to do this for two reasons. I think, one, their star player is happy. And Jeffery Simmons is the only star player on the team. Carnell Tate may become a superstar. I mean, I've seen a lot in camp, in the OTAs and minicamp, that would make me think Carnell Tate's got the goods. Cam Ward, I know you guys all want to believe he's Mahomes. I've told you I don't think it's going to work. I think he's going to be like Mariota. I think you're going to try, and maybe you convince yourself and they convince themselves into giving him a second contract. I'm not buying it. But Simmons is a bona fide star in the NFL. So on one hand, it keeps their star player happy. On the other hand, I think the other reason they did it, they need some positive momentum going into the new stadium. They need some recognizable faces going into the new stadium. They need somebody who represents a brand. And while we can all live in fantasy land, and most of you do, regarding Cam Ward and how good he is going to be, the truth is, when you're trying to sell tickets to a multi-billion-dollar stadium, you need some names that fans know and fans come to see. I almost wonder if this was 2023 with the new stadium on the horizon. I wonder if Amy Adams Strunk would have said, go get Derrick Henry and keep Derrick Henry's contract. Do not let Derrick Henry out that door, because we need a Derrick Henry to market. So the Titans killed two birds with one stone. And again, this is where I go back to Jeffery Simmons getting Todd France, a real agent, as his agent. Jeffery Simmons got a 3-year extension. Well, he still has to play for $20 million over the next 2 years. I don't even know if there was a signing bonus. I'm sure there was. I'm sure there was some sort of signing bonus. But Simmons is not hitting pay dirt for another 2 years. The Titans did win in this deal. And that's what happens. That's what negotiations are. I think if it were up to Jeffery Simmons, he would have wanted the 3 years, $105 million to start right now. And then in 3 years, be able to hit free agency, go get into the contract. That's not going to work. This is it for Simmons. He's done. This is his last contract. He's going to be 33, I think, when this thing is up. But that's what a negotiation is. And it's not so much the contract or the way Simmons handled it or the way Simmons handled his body, which all were good signs of Simmons maturing or Simmons becoming the kind of leader that he kept saying he was. But I think it was the decision to go with Todd France as his agent and stop pulling all the I know better than everybody else because my uncle played in the NFL bullcrap that he had been dealing with for a couple of years. And I think what happens is when you get a big-time agent, you're a big-time player. The big-time agent understands the market, but more importantly, the big-time agent is willing to have conversations with you that maybe other smaller-time agents aren't willing to have. If I was Jared Stillman and I had one client, and that one client was Patrick Mahomes, well, I better do everything in my power not to piss Patrick Mahomes off, or else I'm screwed. But if I'm Tom Condon, who back in the day represented Peyton Manning and Eli Manning and Drew Brees and Matthew Stafford, and I've got 9 quarterbacks that are all at the top of the market, if I need to sit down with a 10th quarterback and I need to have that conversation where I say, hey, you need to clean this up a little bit. Hey, you need to do that a little bit differently. Hey, you need to. Well, if I lose that 10th quarterback, I've still got the 9 other guys. And I think those guys can give you the best advice because they have the best experience and they don't have to kiss your ass. And ever since Todd France came into the picture for Jeffery Simmons, I think we've seen a more grown-up Jeffery Simmons, a more business-like Jeffery Simmons, and I think Simmons got the weight down from 320 to 305, absolutely made a difference in the way he played, and I absolutely think that Jeffery Simmons deserved this contract. But I think this should be a message for a lot of players out there. That is, I know you love your uncle. I know you love your buddy who went to law school. I know LeBron and Rich Paul have turned clutch sports into almost at times what feels like a mafia arm of the NBA. But these big-time agents, these guys that have been there, that have done that, they know the market, they know the going rate, they can have the tough conversations with you, and most importantly, they know what's best for your career and your earning potential, because what's best for your career is what's best for their career. The second thing is, when it comes to the Simmons contract, the Titans have nobody else to pay. Now, I do find this fascinating that the Titans are really putting the money off for 3 years from now. It's very odd how this contract was reported, which I'm going to get to in a second. But the Titans had nobody else to pay. So as the money keeps pouring in on the NFL and the money keeps going up, new stadiums are being built across the league, that money is shared. That revenue is split with the players. TV contracts are going to get renegotiated, but even in the meantime, the NFL has had an influx of cash. They sold NFL Network to ESPN. They've sent out 5 extra games for TV broadcast partners. They are raking it in. Christmas Day games and international YouTube and all kinds of shit. So they're making a boatload of money, and they're going to make even more money in the future. So the Tennessee Titans have a bunch of money they're sitting on, and they got to pay somebody. That's why I think Peter Skoronski is the next domino to follow. Now, let me disclose something. I consider myself very good friends with Peter Skoronski's agent. That's why I actually always use that as a sign when I talk about not being compromised, because I've been on Skoronski's ass. I don't think they should have taken him 11th overall, and his buddy is my agent, or his agent is my buddy. Make sure I get that right. His agent is my buddy. His buddy's my agent. Why do I keep fucking that up? I am dyslexic. His agent is my friend. And I will say this on the Skoronski front. I think Skoronski going to get paid too. And I'd pay Skoronski. And the reason I'd pay Skoronski, even though I don't think guards are that important, and I don't think Skoronski's that good of a guard, I think he's a good starting guard in the NFL. I don't think he's that good of a starting guard in the NFL. But the reason I would pay Skoronski is because I got nobody else to pay. I have nobody else out there to pay. I've got Simmons. I've got Skoronski. Outside of that, Carnell Tate's a rookie. Cam Ward, again, if you guys think Cam Ward's going to be good, that payday is still 2 years away. I think we know Levis isn't getting paid. I think we know Spears isn't getting paid. J.C. Latham will see. There's nobody else to pay. And in the NFL, they have to give away 50% of the revenue to the players, so you've got to pay somebody. And I think that's why the Titans are confident in saying, okay, let's give Simmons $35 million a year into his 30s because we don't have anybody else to pay anyways. And I think the same thing will be done with Skoronski. I mean, look at all the holes that the Titans have on their roster when you're planning out long-term. Like, we don't know who the long-term running back is going to be for the Titans. I don't think we know who the long-term tight end is going to be for the Titans. I think they hope and you hope it's Gunnar Helm, but I'm not so sure on that. When it comes to defense, Simmons obviously got the extension, but who's a young corner that you're going to pay long-term? Who's a young safety that you're going to pay long-term? Before you tell me Kevin Winston Jr., no, he's not Nicky Manwari. So you got to pay somebody, and you might as well pay Skoronski, and then you don't have to worry about that position. And then every year as the market goes up and up and up and up, you don't have to worry about paying for a $29 million guard because you've got a $24 million guard, even if that $24 million guard is the fifth best guard in the NFL. And I'm fine with that. Now, I think the Skoronski contract is a little bit more complicated because unlike almost every other position, interior offensive linemen really can't get franchise tagged. And they can't get franchise tagged because offensive line is considered one position. This is why Tyler Linderbaum went out into free agency and got $29 million a year, whatever it was, with the Raiders, because the Ravens could not franchise tag him because they'd have to pay him tackle money. So right now, the guard salaries, when it comes to the average per year, Tyler Smith in Dallas is $24 million a year. Trey Smith is $23.5. I saw something on News 2 yesterday in which they projected Skoronski to earn about $19 to $22 million a year. I'm just going to tell you, I think the number at Skoronski starts at 24. And it starts at 24 because right now, when it comes to Peter Skoronski's contract, he can just play it out, and you can't tag him. Other players, you can use the tags against them. You can say, well, we're going to tag you twice. And so after that, when you factor in the fifth-year option and the two tags, the total amount of money is $84 million. So let's give you $87 million, and you get more upfront and a signing bonus. And that's why players sign them. That's why you never have LeBron James-like moves from Cleveland to Miami or back to Cleveland in the NFL at quarterback for the most part, because those quarterbacks get franchised. Lamar Jackson tried that, and it didn't work, except for interior offensive linemen. Because when it comes to interior offensive linemen get tagged at the rate of tackles. And so if you want to pay Skoronski like a top 5 offensive lineman in the NFL, which you'd be stupid to do and do it on a yearly basis, I think he'd welcome that. So right now, when it comes to cash, because again, the players, they don't care about their cap hits. They care about how much money is going to be deposited into their checking accounts. Skoronski's due $3.4 million this year. He's due on the 5th-year option next year. He's due $19 million. So you're looking at $23 million basically over the next 2 years. The guard market is $24 a year. So if you are going to make that kind of deal, it's got to start at 24 and it's got to go up. and then you'll get some relief on the back end. But I don't think that it's as simple as everyone's just saying Skoronski's up next, because I know the Titans care about winning deals, and when it comes to winning a deal, it's going to be hard for them to, if they give Skoronski $24.5 million a year, it's going to be hard for them to sit there and say, well, we did it, but who else do you have to pay? So I think that, again, when it comes to Simmons, he deserved the deal. The Titans have nobody else to pay, which is what makes getting a deal like that done very easily. I think it is a commitment to the face of the organization, which is Simmons. And I think we all know Skoronski's up next, but it is a way more complicated because, again, you can't tag Peter Skoronski. There is no, okay, well, what's the other side of this? Well, the other side of this is Peter Skoronski makes $24 million over the next 2 years, and then he's a free agent. And we've seen this on free agent day when guys get free, they get way more money than you think. And Skoronski's an uninjured, solid player. I don't think he's that good. I wouldn't have used the 11th pick on him, but you have nobody else to pay. So I think he's up next. The second thing I want to get to when it comes to the Simmons contract is the way this deal came about and the way this was reported. So when Jeffery Simmons, and this may be so inconsequential, this might just be a Jared Stillman issue. This might just be a me issue. Like something that gets me all worked up and maybe doesn't mean anything to anybody else. So on Friday when Simmons inked the deal, Adam Schefter, everybody else reported at the time, Jeffery Simmons has reset the tackle market. He's blown it out of the water at $35 million a season. And I looked at that and I said, wow. Now, I don't keep a running tally in my head of what the defensive tackle market is, but the top of the D tackle market's 30. And Simmons got 35 a year? Well, it depends on how you look at this. Now, I'm going to say Simmons got 35 a year because Simmons had 2 years left on his contract, and those 2 years aren't going away. So what it is it turns what was a 2-year contract into a 5-year contract. But the new years and new money is 3 at 105.9. So that is a $35 million a year extension. And teams are cool with people reporting it that way, however they want to report it, because the way the Titans are looking at it is the top of the defensive tackle market is $30 million a year. And Simmons, when you factor in the last 2 years on his deal, it's going to be about $30 million over the next 5 years. And again, I think we think that's all going to be fair, right? Like, I think we're all in agreement with that. We're all good. Like, we don't need to say, oh, no, that's crazy. Oh, no, that's too much. Oh, no, I think we're fine with that. So the reason I bring this up is because not a week prior to Simmons signing his 3-year extension on top of the 2 years left on his deal, and it being reported as $35 million a year, do you remember the Patrick Mahomes contract extension? Patrick Mahomes got a 2-year extension worth about $240 million worth of new money. The total for Mahomes was $119 million a year when you factor in the new money and the length of the contract. But the way it was reported was this is the first $500 million contract, but it equals out to $64 million a year. And I'm like, wait a minute. Whoa. $64 million a year. But he already had a contract, and you just added 2 more years onto the contract, and you added $240 million onto the contract. That's $119 million a year in new money. But the way the NFL wants that reported is not Mahomes signed for $119 million a season, just like Josh Allen signed for $100 million a season with a 2-year extension and $200 million in new money last year. They want it reported as $64 million. so that when Drake May goes to the negotiating table next year, the numbers they're working off of are $64 million a year and not $119 million a year. And I would like to think Adam Schefter and the people that report in this league are smart enough to know that. And so we had all this talk with Vrabel and Diana and everything else about how phony the insider culture can be. I look at it like this. If you had a 2-year contract and you had $20 million remaining on your 2-year contract and you signed for 3 more years for $30 million, or you signed for 3 more years, let's say 3 more years at $60 million, that extension is $20 million a year. This previous contract, you can factor it all in. You can do whatever you want. But what is the new years and the new money? For Simmons, it's $35 million a year. Good for Simmons. For Mahomes, it's $119 million a year. But they didn't report it like that. They reported it like it's $64 million a year. And that's probably another reason why the Titans were okay with doing this and guaranteeing so much money, is it probably isn't $35 million in cash per season to Simmons as much as it is a raise this year, a raise next year, and, still more money throughout. To which then the Titans are saying, we're paying market value. Simmons gets to look like he blew out the market, and he gets that $100 million guaranteed. Everybody wins. But we need some, what I would call, intellectually honest reporting. And there's another thing that I think I'm noticing here. When you've got a guy in their prime making good money, who would make way more money on the open market, and he's the face of your franchise, and you give him the money anyways, that's a sign for both the Mahomes deal and the Simmons deal. For instance, Dexter Lawrence just signed a 1-year extension with the Bengals for $28 million. Now, you know how the Bengals work? The Bengals would never, ever, 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 ever do anything like that Jeffery Simmons contract. In fact, they told Trey Hendrickson, we don't do that. They told Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, we don't do that. The only person we guarantee money to after the first year is Joe Burrow, the quarterback. So the Bengals would never do that. So that's why Dexter Lawrence is going to have to go year to year here, because it's just a different situation. But what I see the Titans doing, paying their star player a couple years out, what I see the Chiefs doing, paying their star player a couple years out. And I think we might see more of this. If JSN in Seattle continues to play the way he is playing, even though he just signed a huge contract, I could see JSN in a couple of years looking at the Seahawks and the Seahawks ripping up that contract and giving him a new one. I'm surprised the Seahawks haven't done that with Sam Darnold yet. I'm surprised the Seahawks have not given Sam Darnold, who's making $37.5 million. They haven't ripped up that contract and said, okay, now that you've won a Super Bowl for us, here's $46 million a year. Since, again, the going rate for the top of the league is $119. But that's a different discussion. What it does make me think is that there is a huge revenue boom that is about to happen in the NFL. And the NFL is already accounting for it. Once we see the new TV contracts, and I know the NFL hasn't out, they can start negotiating them, I believe this year, but I think they're in place until 2029 or whatever. When you hear that kind of news, that stuff is getting reported, the truth is that they're way further along than what you just hear as far as being reported. So when I hear and I start to see Rupert Murdoch get his butthole all tight and go running and crying to the president about streaming companies and everything else, and I see the NFL start guaranteeing insane amount of money to players down the road, that tells me a revenue boom is coming. That tells me that the league knows we're about to make a shitload more money. And where's that money coming from? The 18th game. Every single data point is pointing to the inevitable that there will be an 18th game. I remember when we got the 17th game, and I was very much in favor of the 17th game. And I selfishly was in favor of the 17th game, just like I'm selfishly in favor of Thursday night football. I know Thursday night football is bad for the players. There's no way you can play an NFL game at 100% effort and be healed and ready to play on Thursday, especially in November or December after months and months of football practice. So I guess what I'm saying is I was in favor of it because I wanted a 17th game. The way I looked at it, that's a 17th pregame show, check. The way I looked at it was that's another week of the calendar that I get to talk football and football games. And I kind of felt the same way about the 18th game. Now, for some reason, there is this big 18. I don't know if we can do it from the players, but I think deep down inside, J.C. Treader and the players know 18 games is inevitable. And the owners are trying to tell the players you'll get way more money if we go to 18 games. So I don't know if I ever should even debate 18 games. I don't even know how I feel about 18 games. Because while I was in favor of 17 games, and I don't think there's much of a difference from 17 games to 16 games, and I'm not sure there's that much of a difference from 18 games to 17 games, I don't want every team having an international game every year because I think that's bullshit. I don't want 22 games on the schedule. I don't want this to become baseball. And there are going to be little things in there like bye weeks and other things that have to get worked out. This 18 is going to be a debate. It is going to be but every single thing the league is doing is telling you they're adding an 18th game. So while we can debate whether or not they should have an 18th game, I think that's moot. I think the league has decided they're going to have an 18th game. And that's why the Titans are giving Jeffery Simmons more money in advance, which is why the Chiefs are giving Patrick Mahomes more money in advance, is because the 18th game is coming, period. So I do want to get into the Brendan Sorsby discussion. Boy, they were talking on TV this morning about Brendan Sorsby. Oh, my goodness. They were talking about Brendan Sorsby like this guy's better than Fernando Mendoza. And the guy who was saying that is my buddy, Jordan Rogers. And I have not texted Jordan about this and said, wait a minute, hold on. What? I'm having a hard time really finding a team for Brendan Sorsby in the upcoming NFL supplemental draft, which will feature him. July 10th is the day of the pro day. Pete Thamel said last week he expects all 32 teams to send their general manager out to Brendan Sorsby's pro day. I highly doubt that. I don't know where Mike Borgonzi's going on vacation. I don't think he's canceling it to go watch a quarterback when he's got Cam Ward at quarterback. That's just me. And I heard today Mike Tannenbaum talking about teams using a second-round pick in the supplemental draft, expecting that to be a late second-round pick. And he used the Detroit Lions as an example, saying, let's get Brendan Sorsby, let's redshirt him on the bench behind Jared Goff for a year, and then let's see what we have. And if we decide to keep him and Sorsby develops, then we can trade him for a bunch of picks. If not, we can move off of Jared Goff and we can move to Brendan Sorsby. Stop. Number one, everybody needs to understand how the supplemental draft works. You place a value on the player. This is not, all right, Seattle is on the clock. No, you put a value on the player. Let's say third round, and you submit it to the league. And so then the league gets back and they say, okay, Tennessee put in a third round claim on him. Everybody else put in fourth or below. So Tennessee gets him for a third round pick. You don't have a third round pick in next year's draft. That is how the supplemental draft works. So it's not as if when I hear first round pick, nobody is giving up their first round pick for Brendan Sorsby. I came up with a list of teams that I think could have legitimate interest in this guy if he is as talented as they say he is. These are teams that don't have established quarterbacks, top of the line starting guys, or don't have younger guys that they are expecting to blossom into stars. For instance, you've got a young guy you're expecting to blossom into a star in Cam Ward. Miami, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Indianapolis, the Jets, Tampa Bay, and Arizona. That's it. So, when it comes to Sorsby, I have no idea how good Brendan Sorsby is. I didn't watch Cincinnati play football last year, so I'll have to take Jordan Rodgers' word for it. And I think what I've heard consistently is this guy, from a talent standpoint, would have been QB2 in this year's previous draft after Fernando Mendoza. Then it would have been Mendoza, Sorsby, and then Ty Simpson, just going off of talent and production alone. Well, if you're a really, really bad team, you're not using your first-round pick in the supplemental draft, because that first-round pick in the supplemental draft might be number 1 overall. That might be Dante Moore. And that is a more talented prospect, more battle-tested, without a gambling addiction. So I don't think any team's going to use a first-round pick on him. And then a team that has an established quarterback, they can't use a first or second-round pick on a project quarterback, because teams like the Buffalo Bills are going to need to use those draft picks. The Baltimore Ravens, the Kansas City Chiefs, they're going to need to use those draft picks in order to build a team around Mahomes, Allen, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, etc. Then when I thought about, okay, let's go through each one of these teams that I put on the list. There are 3 teams that stood out to me, and even then I'm like, but I would not, no matter how talented this guy is, I would not put a first-round pick on Brendan Sorsby, because the gambling issue alone knocks him down, in my opinion. Even if he's overcome the gambling issue, even if it's like alcoholism, right? I know people that are alcoholics. It is a terrible disease. I hate it. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. But if you're an alcoholic, it's going to be tough for me to draft you in the first round to be my starting quarterback. And this is gambling we're talking about, and he gambled on his own team. And that, to me, is a no-no. So I don't think anybody can use a first-round pick on him. So take that off the board. The second-round pick, I can't envision a team like Detroit. I can't believe a team like the Chiefs or any of those teams using a second-round pick in next year's draft on a quarterback that's going to develop and sit on the bench this year. Wouldn't you just rather use that second-round pick to trade for a player that's going to help you win the Super Bowl? So I think it starts at best with a third-round pick, but even then, Miami just signed Malik Willis to a contract. I don't think they should have signed Malik Willis to a contract. I don't think Malik Willis is that good, but they signed Malik Willis to a contract, and at the end of the day, you want to give Malik Willis a chance. I don't see Miami using a third-round pick to bring in Brendan Sorsby when they've already got a young guy in Quinn Ewers that they could put out there. Pittsburgh used a third-round pick on Drew Aller in this year's draft. So if they've got Drew Aller, who they want to try to develop on the bench, and maybe he can be the heir apparent to Aaron, even though I think Drew Aller sucks, why would you use a pick on Sorsby when, if Aaron falls off the cliff this year, you can put Drew Aller out there, and your first-round pick may allow you to get Dante Moore or Arch Manning or Lenoris Sellers or one of those guys. Cleveland, I think, really is in the market for Arch Manning or for Dante Moore. And I think the way they look at it is, this year, we'll play Deshaun a little bit. We'll give Shedeur another chance. We'll see if Shedeur can develop a little bit. They've already punted on Dylan Gabriel. He sucks. But we'll give Shedeur Sanders a chance. And if Shedeur Sanders is as bad as we think Shedeur Sanders is, and if Deshaun Watson is as bad as we think Deshaun Watson is, then we'll be able to draft Dante Moore. And I don't think they want Brendan Sorsby around. Again, think of this if you're the Browns. This year's a throwaway. You traded away Myles Garrett. You've been stockpiling picks. You've got a lot of young talent. You don't necessarily have a quarterback. Shedeur could be your guy. We know Dylan Gabriel's not. But if Shedeur Sanders ends up not being your guy, it's probably because you're 2-15. And then forget about Brendan Sorsby. You just draft Dante Moore or Arch Manning. So I don't see him going to Cleveland. Indy just paid for Daniel Jones. They've got to protect their picks because they traded 2 first-rounders away for Sauce Gardner. Then there's Arizona, drafted Carson Beck in the 3rd round. I think they're going to do what Cleveland's doing, which is we're rebuilding with young players. We're going to try with Carson Beck at some point this year, but if Carson Beck's not our guy, we'll try to go get Arch Manning. We'll try to go get Dante Moore, which leaves me with 2 teams. It leaves me with the Jets, and it leaves me with Tampa Bay. The Jets are in a weird spot. Their owner, Woody Johnson, calls the shots, and who knows how he woke up and on what side of the bed he woke up on to make this kind of decision. The head coach, Aaron Glenn, is on the hot seat. One thing coaches love doing when they're on the hot seat, drafting a young quarterback to say, see, we're making progress with the young guy. It didn't help Brian Callahan. It didn't help Brian Dable, but they still believe that's a thing. The Jets have Geno Smith at quarterback. Geno Smith stinks. The Jets would make sense. Yes, they drafted Cade Klubnik. Yes, I think the Jets, given all the first-round picks they're going to have in next year's draft, they're probably thinking about Dante Moore. They're probably thinking about Arch Manning. I think I could see the Jets doing this because if you're Aaron Glenn, this is the backup plan. If it doesn't work with Geno Smith and Geno Smith's last coach got fired, this is the backup plan of, hey, we're going to try Sorsby, and maybe this guy will give us just enough to keep our jobs. So I could put the Jets in there as a contender. And then there's Tampa Bay. And here's why I put Tampa Bay on the list. And here's why I think Tampa Bay might be the only team that makes real sense for me with Brendan Sorsby. Baker Mayfield is the starting quarterback of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, period. They drafted Jameis Winston. They signed Tom Brady. They drafted Kyle Trask. And when they knew that Kyle Trask wasn't going to be the heir apparent to Tom Brady, they went ahead and signed Baker Mayfield. Remember, it was a competition. Kind of like Kyler Murray and J.J. McCarthy is a competition. Baker had a great year. But with Baker, there still was, is he the guy? Is he not the guy? So he signed a 3-year, $100 million contract. That's quarterback. Jeffery Simmons signed a bigger contract than Baker Mayfield did. Baker Mayfield is entering year 3 of that 3-year contract. And Baker Mayfield has let it be known. He is not going to lay down for the Buccaneers. I think the way Baker looks at it is, I'm the guy here. The way Jared Goff is the guy in Detroit. The way Jordan Love is the guy in Green Bay. The way Jalen Hurts is the guy in Philadelphia. The way Trevor Lawrence is the guy in Jacksonville. Baker Mayfield saying, I'm the guy. I think Tampa Bay is looking at Baker Mayfield saying, we like Baker, but Baker is not Tom Brady. Baker is not Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or Joe Burrow or Lamar Jackson. And he's not one of these young up-and-comers like a Justin Herbert or like a Drake May. He's good. He's not great. And in the quarterback market, as far as contracts are concerned, that leaves a lot of room in between where Tampa Bay probably is and where Baker is in terms of what they think the value is. If you're Tampa Bay, you could use a 3rd-round pick on Brendan Sorsby, and you could say, this is our Baker insurance. But it is also our note to Baker Mayfield that if you don't want to play ball with us on a contract, we'll have the option to franchise tag you at the end of the year, but we're also thinking about this guy. This guy could be in the mix. Be careful, Baker Mayfield. So I know we're hearing crazy stuff on TV about 2nd round. And look, some of these owners get involved, and when it comes to quarterback, and they say, oh, we got to get him. Oh, we got to. I just don't see teams that make sense for this. Maybe Jerry does something stupid because Jerry does stupid things like this, like when he traded a 4th for Trey Lance. I think the only team that makes sense for Brendan Sorsby is Tampa Bay at a third-round pick. That's the only top 100 pick that I think I could justify being used on Brendan Sorsby when other teams like Arizona and Pittsburgh have decided they want to shoot their shot with Drew Aller or shoot their shot with Carson Beck. And if it doesn't work, then go into next year's draft and draft Lenora Sellers or draft Arch Manning or draft whomever, Dante Moore. Tampa Bay is the one team I think might actually make sense because Sorsby does help them in the immediate, and that is in the immediate negotiation with Baker Mayfield. Mike Vrabel, CBS Sports, names the New England Patriots as the third biggest loser of the 2026 offseason due to VrabelGate. CBS writing at cbssports.com. This became a bona fide football story when Vrabel stepped out of the office for the final day of the 2026 draft. But this is also a leader of men who was shamed for a major personal mistake, alleged mistake. Vrabel would love for this story to fade away, but has his confidence taken a hit? What about the way his players view him? The reigning NFL Coach of the Year was always seen as a hard-nosed, authoritative figure capable of getting the most out of his players. How about now? To make a list of NFL teams that had the worst off seasons and not include the Patriots would be disingenuous. To make matters worse, the Patriots are the prime regression candidate in 2026 after going 14-3 last year with help from the easiest schedule since the turn of the millennium. The Patriots have the sixth toughest schedule in 2026, including the toughest weeks 1 through 4 strength of schedule by any team in 40 years. Imagine if the Patriots get off to a slow start in September. That could breathe even more life into the controversy New England and its fans want to go away. People are still waiting for the next shoe to drop. What will the Athletics investigation find? And what will Rossini have to say in the future? Let me say this. I very clearly have enjoyed the VrabelGate saga. Now, I don't think I've taken it as far as other people have, that every day still post things like, what is ESPN hiding? What is the NFL hiding? What is Mike Silver hiding? Look at the photos on Instagram Mike Silver's liking. Even that is a little over the top for me. But here's what I think when it comes to Vrabel, the Patriots, and the season. I think VrabelGate is at a simmer right now. It's still on the range, but it's not boiling. It's not smoking. It's not on fire. It was on fire around the draft when Diana resigned. But I think right now it's simmering. And I think it's simmering for 3 reasons. Number 1, The Athletic is going to publicly release the findings of the Diana Rossini investigation. And I know they're going to publicly release them because they've already been leaking to the press that they're still working on their investigation and that this investigation will cover conduct with her reporting, not conduct outside of her reporting. So basically what they're going to do is they're going to analyze everything that she wrote over the years, and then they're going to try to figure out whether or not that was slanted to Vrabel. Well, if she's resigned, she's probably not cooperating in the investigation. So, I mean, I guess you'd have editor's notes or editor's interviews or things like that. But it's pretty hard for me to envision that there's going to be some sort of bombshell in her reporting. After all, when she got to The Athletic, her and Vrabel clearly already had their relationship going on. I was already onto them when Diana Rossini went to The Athletic. So much so that Diana and I talked about it, not talked about it, but talked around it on the sideline at a joint practice between the Titans and the Vikings in 23. And she even knew it at the time. I was, magnifying glass with her work when he was the coach of the Titans and she was at The Athletic. I highly doubt they're going to find anything that we don't know, but it's still going to make a headline no matter what it is, especially if it comes out and it says there was nothing there after the Athletics investigation, which only one person on the planet, Joe Rexrode, would actually believe is true. The second thing that is going to keep this story alive. Remember the Daily Mail reported Diana was ready to talk like 3 months ago? And we haven't heard a peep from Diana since then? Either the Patriots, the league, Vrabel, somebody paid her not to say anything, or at some point that interview is going to happen. And when that interview happens, that will be something. And again, the thing about VrabelGate that I've realized is that any piece of real news that pushes this story forward, unless Team USA is in the final of the World Cup, is going to be A1 news. Like if there was something juicy, like when those bar pictures in New York came out, if that was coming to the forefront today, while the Boston Celtics are almost certainly trying to trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo, I still think Vrabel and Rossini jumps it. It's the NFL. He's Mike fucking Vrabel. The third thing. So I don't know when Diana's going to talk or if that was all bullshit from the Daily News, but that would be the next thing. The third thing, and this is the real thing. This is the most important. This is why VrabelGate hasn't died. If the New England Patriots do not get off to a good start after making the Super Bowl last year, everybody will blame this. If we lived in a fantasy world where VrabelGate never happened and Diana Rossini is still reporting for The Athletic and Vrabel is still the Macho Man Coach of the Year coming off of an AFC championship and they're still fucking each other on the sides and nobody knows about it, if we lived in that sphere, if that existence were to happen, there's no way to actually know what it would be like, but I'm going to make an assumption here. If that had never happened and the Patriots started off 1-3, it's going to be hard to win in Jacksonville in September. It's going to be hard to win at Denver. It's going to be hard to win against Buffalo. It's going to be hard to win at Seattle when they drop the banner. They probably should beat Pittsburgh in week 2, but it's not like that would be the upset of the century if they lose at home to Pittsburgh. If they start off 1-3 and they get off to a rough start, people would say, well, the Patriots did make the Super Bowl last year, but it would bring up the easy schedule discussion and the fact that they got rocked by the Seahawks in the Super Bowl. It would bring all that back to the forefront, and that would be the discussion. It wouldn't be Vrabel's distracted, Drake May's not that good. It wouldn't be any of that. Now, if they start off poorly, the Vrabel saga becomes 100% of the talk, especially after the trade for A.J. Brown. And that's why this story, again, to me, is simmering. It's not dying. It's simmering. If the Patriots start off 3-1 and we never see or hear from Diana Rossini again, then the story is dead. Until then, it's still kind of in the background. And the other thing to keep your eye on when it comes to Vrabel and VrabelGate, Mike Vrabel has talked, once every 2 weeks for the last month? He didn't talk for a month between his impromptu draft press conference and the first minicamp practice or whatever it was that he did talk about, and they barely asked him shit. Well, Mike Vrabel's about to talk 5 times a week starting next month. So that may also add another dynamic to this story. And finally, I'm in. Team USA. 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 So, I watched the Paraguay match. We kicked the shit out of them. I then was on SiriusXM on Friday, not leading into the Australia match, but it was the morning of the Australia match. Eric Winalda, the U.S. the U.S. Soccer Hall of Famer, who hosts a show on SiriusXM FC, he came on with me on the morning of the Australia match, and he was like, Jared, don't worry about it. This team is legit. Don't worry about getting all bent out of shape about losing. It's not going to happen, even with Pulisic out. Get excited. This team, he was like, I met with the team before they left, and I am feeling something with this team. I said, okay. I watched a game on Friday. They beat Australia. Crushed them. They've now won Group D, and they will most likely play Bosnia in the first knockout round match. I don't want to count my chickens before they've hatched, but we're better than Bosnia. The betting market says we're better than Bosnia. Our FIFA ranking says we're better than Bosnia. Now, I don't want to pretend to be Joe Soccer because I am not. I don't want to pretend like I wake up on Saturday mornings to watch the Premier League because you people know me well enough and you know that I do not do that. But I'm excited. Now, I hate the fact that they're playing Turkey with nothing to gain or really nothing to lose this Thursday. That will not make it as exciting. And I think the coach has already said he's going to sit the yellow card guys, and Pulisic is not going to play. And so we still should win that. We're going to the knockout round. Here's what I kept saying, because ESPN wrote a story on Saturday morning, and the headline basically said, okay, you can now believe in Team USA. That's what they say. You can now believe that Team USA can win the World Cup. Zatlan, or whatever the hell his name is, and I know he's a big soccer superstar on Fox. After the match on Friday, they asked him, they said, can the U.S. win the World Cup? He said yes. And I'm not going to lie. I was in my living room. I had my USA soccer hat that I bought from Walgreens about 2 months ago because I figured it'd be a great boat hat. Had my USA soccer hat on, and I was standing there, USA, USA. But here's what I've decided I think USA soccer's like. And I'm going to watch, and I'm excited, and I'm rooting for the boys. I feel like USA soccer right now is in the space that Indiana football was in last year before they went to Oregon and they beat Oregon. So if you remember Indiana, the first year under Curt Cignetti, they came out of nowhere. They were having a good season, but they got beat by Ohio State. They made it to the playoff. They got beat by Notre Dame. Neither of those games were particularly close. And it looked like Indiana was a nice story, but not really a competitor. Right now, I feel like Team USA is a nice story, but I don't think they're a competitor. But then last year, when Indiana went on the road to Oregon and they smoked Oregon, that was the moment that it was, oh no, Indiana might actually have a shot to win the national championship. Then Indiana beats Ohio State, and then I don't think there was any question if Indiana was a contender, and then they still smoked Alabama and they still smoked Oregon. For Team USA, for me to actually think that there is a chance, my entire life of watching soccer has been us competing with nations like Ghana and Algeria, and sometimes losing. For me to think that Team USA could actually win the World Cup, what would have to happen is Team USA would have to knock off one of the big boys. Just like Indiana going to Oregon and beating Oregon, and that being the moment where Indiana went from a good story because they always suck to now Indiana might win the national championship. I think if Team USA knocked off a big boy, then I would go from, hey, this is the most dominant soccer I've ever seen, great story USA, to, oh my God, we might win the World Cup. I don't think we'll face a big boy until the quarterfinal, in which I think we would get matched up with Spain. That's a long time to wait. And again, you could lose to Bosnia in the knockout round, and I think that would be a disappointment. But it's my way of saying that I am cautiously optimistic about Team USA's chances. I don't think anybody expects us to beat England or France or Argentina or Spain or Germany. But I'd like to see what we look like against them. Because I do know this. I do know that we are dominating the crap bums. Because Paraguay, we dominated them. And Australia, I know, it wasn't as pretty as Paraguay. We won 2-0 and it wasn't even really close. So put me on board. USA, USA, USA. I'm not sitting here today telling you that I'm the biggest soccer fan. I'm not going to one of the games and spending the exorbitant amount of money it would cost to do so. But I am excited. That's going to do it for us. We're out of here today. Thank you to Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, our presenting sponsor. Be sure to like and subscribe. Leave a review. Whether you listen on Spotify, Apple, 5 stars, and leave a review. Comment down below on YouTube. We appreciate it all. We're over 5,000 subscribers. We're almost double my former employer, who, again, I haven't even been doing this for a year. And that's where we are now. So thank you to everybody. We'll be back on Wednesday, still live at 2 o'clock Central Time, Stillman and Company on the 440 Sports Network.